God is more concerned about who you're becoming than he is about what you are looking to receive. Now, that's not to say that God doesn't want to fulfill your prayer. And that's not to say that God isn't listening to you. But a lot of us, especially Christian entrepreneurs, we get caught up in just praying for certain circumstances to change or just praying for resources to come in. Now, again, God can definitely send the rain, but we also have to do our job in positioning our field and ourselves as to have we been sowing in the right fields and have we been digging up the well. And so there's actually 5 prayers that we want to consider making instead of asking God for more money, that is going to take us into not just a deeper relationship with God, but it's also going to place us in an understanding of how God does something instead of what can we get out of God's hand. And so if you've ever been in a spot where you are looking to make a business decision and you don't know which direction to go in, and you are unsure about the hire that you should make, or you're unsure about the product that you should launch, that first prayer is going to be geared around discernment. Now, there's a couple types of discernment that the Bible speaks of, but one of the main ones that we want to talk about isn't so much on discerning of spirits. That's more on the discerning of what type of spirit somebody's operating in, although that is important. But we also want to be able to discern timelines, and we want to be able to discern patterns. And you'll see this all throughout the Bible where God starts to show patterns to people and he starts to show them different timelines of why something took place the way that it did. And if that thing doesn't change, this is where it's headed. This is very prophetic. And it keeps us from getting caught up in partnerships that we could have simply avoided had we brought it to God and say, hey, God, I want to present to you this partnership that I'm thinking about getting into. Now, this could be the best person in the world for maybe something else that I'm building, but for this specific thing, is your hand on this decision? Going forward, that is how I've been filtering my prayers. It isn't, God, this is what I want to do. And so I hope that, you can join me on this joint venture. No, 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 no. It is, God, this is where I am looking to take the business, but I'm not taking it in that direction, even if I think I can make more money out of it, even if I think that this is a slam dunk of an offer, even if I think that this is a fantastic partnership from my own carnal lens, from my own human lens. God, is your hand on this decision? Help me discern the timeline of this. Help me discern the season that I am in. And is this the right step that I should be making given the resources that I have? And so this is completely different from what happens in the Western world and how we are taught to make decisions, which is if you feel good, if it feels good in your heart, or if you feel at ease. Look, I'll be the first one to tell you. And if you've ever felt this, let me know in the comments, please. I can't be the only one. There are things that God will ask you to do that's going to feel completely contradictory to everything else that you're seeing in front of you from the data that you're operating from. And that can feel painful and that can feel extremely uncomfortable. And the reason I think that a lot of Christian entrepreneurs run from that is because we'll hijack one verse and then we'll apply it and we'll spray it across everything else. And so typically the verse that they'll pull from is, my yoke is easy, right? Or my burden is light. But then we negate the fact that all throughout the Bible that there are seasons that God would allow someone to go through so that they actually turn their eye and turn their focus on him. And so there's a lot of, don't get me wrong, like there's a lot of spots that we can obviously avoid when we are praying for discernment, that there are some hardships that you flat out shouldn't be going through. Like there are some hardships that are easily preventable had we prayed about it a little bit more, had we postured ourselves and put ourselves in a position to really hear from God and pick up on the spiritual cues that he's given us. Next thing that we're going to be praying for, instead of just asking God for more money and just asking God to make it rain, is going to be boldness. And I don't think that a lot of Christian entrepreneurs take enough advantage of supernatural boldness, especially if you are undercapitalized, especially if you are the minority, especially if you are what they call the small fish in the big pond. And I always like to turn to Gideon on this, because Gideon had a couple of different instances where the angel of the Lord came to him and called him brave warrior, told him that twice. Had to remind him, hey, look, I know that you're a coward, and I know that you don't want to go into this battle, and I know that you're trying to whimper or find an easier route and not looking to go into it, and you're looking for the biggest army that you can find, and you're trying to ease your anxiety by looking at the resources that you think you need. But God says, hey man, like you only need 300. I've said this before. I think that this is like really cool because I think that this is where the original 300 movie came from. And so God says, hey, you actually only need 300. And so started right around 32,000, then dropped to right around 11,000, give or take. And then he dropped to 300 people. Like, really think about this for a second. You are about to go up against the fiercest competitors in your marketplace. And all you have around you is the level of talent that you currently have access to, the level of resources that you currently have access to, the current platform that you currently have access to. So that could be a couple of followers on Instagram. That could be a couple of followers on Facebook. Heck, you might only have a couple of 2-star reviews on Google. And God says, hey, look, you're going to have to pray for boldness on this because there's going to be some things that I'm going to call for you to do, but I can only stand behind it if that spirit of fear is not what's operating behind you. Because God has not given a spirit of fear. God has not given us a spirit of fear. He's given us a spirit of power, love, and of sound mind. And so if we take a look at that verse, then we can lay it on top of what we have here, which is boldness, which is what we're praying for in the second piece, then we can confidently say that the strength of which we make decisions isn't coming from the filter or the lens of how we view ourselves, but rather how God has designed us and how he's processing us through this moment. Number three is wisdom. Praying for wisdom is the cheat code that allowed Solomon to unlock not just a reign and not just a dynasty over his kingdom, over his rulership that God had given him through his father David, but it was a cheat code that allowed him to make decisions that would bring people to him that would later go on to bless him. And so Queen Sheba was actually one of those people. And so it said that Queen Sheba came across the land wealthy, had her own kingdom, came in. Bible says that she came in with her entire staff, came in with her team to ask Solomon the most difficult questions that she could not find answers to herself. And so here's what ended up happening. After Solomon had not just answered her questions, but they also saw how Solomon conducted himself and how his team was dressed and how they showed up, because wisdom isn't for you. Wisdom has a trickle effect for everyone else around you. And so it ripples across the decisions that you make and the words that you use, the products that you put out, the service that you're providing across the whole 9 yards. And so when we understand that, we can then see what ends up happening with Queen Sheba and with Solomon, which is the following. It says that after she had been impressed and she had been satisfied with the answers that he had given her, it said that she left rare jewels, rare spices, and rare materials. And so in the modern world, what that means is that he was paid to provide a level of service that exceeded her expectations. And so I want you to think to yourself right now, okay, am I actually praying for true wisdom? I'm not talking about me studying, me jumping on YouTube, although that is important, learning a skill, getting on here, listening to a podcast. Again, that's important. What I'm talking about is digging into prayer and saying, hey, God, this is my human lens of how I'm looking at this. I want you to remove the blinders and expand my focal point of how I'm looking at my situation. Let's bring it practical. The person that I plan on hiring, is this the best move given where we're at right now to bring this person on? The product that we plan on launching, is this the right timing for the product that I plan on launching? Should we allocate $25,000 toward these next initiatives or toward these next campaigns? I think a lot of people get caught up in thinking that some of this stuff is woo-woo. I don't think this stuff is woo-woo. You'll see this layered all throughout the Bible, where you'd have men and women, they'd come to God and they say, hey, how do you want us to build this thing? Like, what are the dimensions that you want us to use? Go back and go to Leviticus. Go watch how they built the ark. Go back and go to Exodus and take a look at how they structured their tents so that the high priest can go in there and communicate with God. Go in and take a look at Genesis, how Noah and his sons, like, we're not talking about experts. We're talking about people that heard from God and said, okay, I have the dimensions of how to build this thing. Okay, I'm going to get these supplies. I'm going to use acacia wood. Okay, cool. I'm going to use these type of leaves. Okay, cool. I'm going to let it sit for this amount of days. Okay, and you see where we're going with it, right? That comes from supernatural wisdom, ladies and gents. That does not come from us just reading and watching and being a bystander. And again, I'm not saying that you 100% want to be educated and you want to be freaking good at what you do in business. If not, you're going to be put out of business. But I'm talking about if you're only relying on that piece right there, then you're forgetting every other thing that God can use to, again, bless you with where you are now and take you into a deeper realm. Number 4 is clarity. Most entrepreneurs have how I have it written down. Most entrepreneurs aren't struggling because they're lazy. They're building the wrong thing confidently. So you want to ask God to show you exactly what you're called to build and what to stop. This is what Nehemiah did. So Nehemiah didn't just have a passion for the wall. He had a specific plan and specific assignments and refused to be distracted from it. So God says, hey, man, I want you to build this wall. And I want you to really dial this thing in with me. And so Nehemiah says, okay, cool, I'll do this. But you're going to have to walk me through how we're going to lay this out. Because if I'm only going off of my basic understanding of how physics works, and if I'm going off of my basic understanding of how the economics works, then based on what I'm seeing, God, this ain't gonna work. And so I needed to really break this thing down for me at a 3rd grade level. I needed to really break this thing down for me in a space where it brings me out of my own way and pulls me into the direction of, again, how you've designed me and how you've created me for this time. And then lastly, and of the 4, this is what I call the glue that holds everything together. And that is going to be stewardship. God won't trust you with thousands. God won't trust you with millions if he can't trust you with thousands. If you haven't made thousands yet in your business, God can't trust you with thousands if he can't trust you with hundreds. If you haven't made hundreds in your business yet, you're a startup. God will not trust you with hundreds if he can't trust you with a couple dollars, right? And so when we are looking at stewardship, we want to make sure that we're looking at it from a biblical lens. Because if we're not careful, we'll start to put words in God's own mouth saying that, oh, I'm stewarding the moment, or I'm stewarding what God gave me, which means that I don't want to put myself out there, or I don't want to invest into my business, or I don't want to invest into other people, or I don't want to invest into the markets, or I don't want to invest into providing a better service for my clients. And so we start to hoard. And then we say, oh, I am stewarding the finances that God gave me. I'm being wise with where I'm going. No, my friend, you're being scarce. And because you're being scarce, you are masquerading it like it's stewardship, and it's not. It's a scarcity loop that you're running because you've been hurt by investing into areas that you didn't yield a result in and that you didn't see a return on investment on. And now you're using that previous trauma to say, oh, I didn't like the way that turned out. That hurt really bad. Let me not make that decision again, but I have to challenge you. When you made that initial investment, did you bring God on that decision? Did we discern through it? Did we act on boldness? Did we ask for his wisdom? Did we have clarity on that decision? So now you're starting to see how all these pieces come together, and it goes beyond just asking God for money. Because getting the money is the easy part. Like, I'll say that again. Getting the money is the easy part. Everything that we're describing is a magnetic pull that brings in resources. Everything that we're talking about is a magnetic pull that brings in the right talent. Everything that we're talking about is a magnetic pull that brings in the customers, that brings in the clients. But if we don't have the hierarchy in place of what we're talking about now and why we pray through things the way that we do, then we miss the mark and we miss the point. And so if you're watching this content right now, hopefully you've taken some notes. And let me know down in the comments, which of these do you feel You're being prompted to, hey, I've been praying about discernment, I've been praying about boldness, but I've been lacking wisdom in my decisions, or I've had the wisdom, I've had the clarity, but I haven't had the right stewardship over the resources and finances that God's given me up to this point. Like, let's be vulnerable on here. Look, I've struggled with all of these right now, and I'm not perfect by any means, which is why I wanted to create this piece, because this was actually inspired by an Instagram Reels that I put out that a lot of people they honestly just connected with, and they say, yo, this is really good. Can we expand on that? So to that, I said 100%. Let's do it, which is why we created this piece for you right here. If you found value in this content, consider hitting the subscribe button down below. And if you found value in this video, then you probably enjoyed this one right over here. Enjoy.